I view this through the prism of someone who doesn't like cancel culture. That does not mean there are not certain cases where someone says something or does something that rises to a level where they ought to lose their jobs. That was not the case with Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel said something that was wrong. And yet Don Jr. and Senator Mike Lee and Elon Musk and many others did the same thing with regard to the Minnesota shooting.
I've been hearing a lot about what I need to say and do tonight. And the truth is, I don't think what I have to say is going to make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. I have no illusions about changing anyone's mind. But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human. And that is, you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way. I have many friends and family members on the other side who I love and remain close to, even though we don't agree on politics at all. I don't think the murderer who shot Charlie Kirk represents anyone. This was a sick person who believed violence was a solution, and it isn't. Ever. And also, selfishly, I am a person who gets a lot of threats. I get many ugly and scary threats against my life, my wife, my kids, my coworkers because of what I choose to say. And I know those threats don't come from the kind of people on the right who I know and love. So that's what I wanted to say on that subject.
All right, and so for those of you who say, oh, well, you know, now he's getting all emotional, now he's changing his tune, it's actually not true, because here is what Kimmel said the week before he said the stuff that got him taken off the air. And this is something I don't think people are talking about enough. This is number 15. This is Kimmel on, so his comments that got him pulled were from the 14th, I think. This is from a few days earlier. This is number 15.
The second largest city in our bitterly divided nation, where, like the rest of the country, we're still trying to wrap our heads around the senseless murder of the popular podcaster and conservative activist Charlie Kirk yesterday, whose death has amplified our anger, our differences. And I've seen a lot of extraordinarily vile responses to this from both sides of the political spectrum. Some people are cheering this, which is something I won't ever understand. And we had another school shooting yesterday in Colorado, the 100th one of the year. And with all these terrible things happening, you would think that our president will at least make an attempt to bring us together. But he didn't. President Obama did. President Biden did. Presidents Bush and Clinton did. President Trump did not. Instead, he blamed Democrats for their rhetoric. The man who told a crowd of supporters that maybe the Second Amendment people should do something about Hillary Clinton. The man who said he wouldn't mind if someone shot through the fake news media. The man who unleashed a mob on the Capitol and said Liz Cheney should face 9 barrels shooting at her for supporting his opponent blames the radical left for their rhetoric.
Now, you can disagree with Kimmel about his comments on Trump, but it is clear he is denouncing anyone who was somehow cheering the death of Charlie Kirk. And that would be a reason to be really mad at Jimmy Kimmel if he seemed to be somehow justifying, defending, or celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. And it is clear he did not do that. So now he is back on ABC, but he is not back on Nexstar and Sinclair, which are ABC-owned and operated stations. It's about 25% or so of the ABC channels, maybe a little more. And I think that what Nexstar and Sinclair is doing is a combination of virtue signaling, protecting their interests, which I understand, and a little bit of politics. And The part that I understand is when you have Brendan Carr, who is the FCC chair, threatening to take action because of Kimmel, well, I can understand. Business decisions have to be made. And if they would just say, if Nexstar and Sinclair would say, look, the FCC chair is making threats here, we take them seriously, okay, I'd understand. But instead, you have these claims of, well, we want to see what else happens from here. And, we want to do what's in the public interest. It's like, oh, come on. Stop. And by the way, bravo to Disney for having the guts to put Kimmel on. That's not the easy decision, I don't think. I think that's the hard decision. I can tell you as someone who was canceled, and in my case, I was canceled by the left, I didn't think his show was coming back. Remember, I had a show called Live PD where we covered law enforcement in real time. And in the wake of the George Floyd incident, all law enforcement was bad. All cops were bad. Got to take this show off the air. Oh, we're just suspending it. We're not canceling it. It wasn't a suspension. The show was canceled. And again, if you want to view it through a business prism, at the time, you can understand the pressure that was being put on to take the show off the air. Now, the good news is that we have a live police show that is now back on the air on a network called Reels. The show's called On Patrol Live. I don't think that's going to happen again, but I know what it means to be canceled, and I am firmly against it. Now, notice that I'm not using the word First Amendment, because the First Amendment only really applies when you're talking about government pressure. And in the case of Kimmel, there was government pressure. The FCC chair, Brendan Carr, saying they could either do it the hard way or the easy way. And then he's sort of making references to language that can lead a broadcast network to lose their license, something called news distortion. This is number 14. This is the FCC chair yesterday talking about that issue, number 14.
And what I spoke about last week was that when concerns are raised about news distortion, there's an easy way for parties to address that and work that out. And in the main, that takes place between local television stations that are licensed by the FCC and what we call national programmers like Disney. They work that out, and there doesn't need to be any involvement of the FCC. Now, if they don't, there's a way that's not as easy, which is someone can file a complaint at the FCC, and then the FCC, by law, as set up by Congress, has to adjudicate that complaint. And what I've been very clear in the context of the Kimmel episode is the FCC, and myself in particular, have expressed no view on the ultimate merits had something like that been filed.
We're taking no position. We can either do it the easy way or the hard way. And he's saying we're not taking any position. Come on. Again, I view this through the prism of someone who doesn't like cancel culture. That does not mean there are not certain cases where someone says something or does something that rises to a level where they ought to lose their jobs. That was not the case with Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel said something that was wrong. It was inaccurate about the shooter of Charlie Kirk. And yet Don Jr. and Senator Mike Lee and Elon Musk and many others did the same thing with regard to the Minnesota shooter, claiming he was from the left. Not true. But I don't think any of them, should be canceled as a result of it. And it's a little different because they're not media people per se. But it is a similar-ish issue. Now, here is Kimmel responding to Brendan Carr. This is number 9 last night.
Brendan Carr, the chairman of the FCC, telling an American company, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, and that these companies can find ways to change conduct and take action on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead. In addition to being a direct violation of the First Amendment, is not a particularly intelligent threat to make in public. Ted Cruz said he sounded like a mafioso. Although, I don't know, if you want to hear a mob boss make a threat like that, you have to hide a microphone in a deli and park outside in a van with a tape recorder all night long. This genius said it on a podcast.
And here's where Kimmel is right as a legal matter. There is a Supreme Court decision that I think is pretty close to right on point. And you may have heard about it, the National Rifle Association versus VULO. The NRA sued the New York Department of Financial Services, alleging that the superintendent there, Maria Vullo, had violated the First Amendment by coercing particular insurance companies and banks from doing business with the NRA to try to punish the NRA. And Justice Sonia Sotomayor, writing for the court, said, quote, 6 decades ago, this court held that a government entity's threat of invoking legal sanctions and other means of coercion against a third party to achieve the suppression of disfavored speech violates the First Amendment. Today, the court reaffirms what it said then. Government officials cannot attempt to coerce private parties in order to punish or suppress views that the government disfavors. Petitioner NRA plausibly alleges that Maria Vullo did just that. As superintendent of the New York Department of Financial Services, she allegedly pressured regulated agencies to help her stifle the NRA's pro-gun advocacy by threatening enforcement actions against those entities that refuse to disassociate from the NRA and other gun promotion advocacy groups. These allegations, if true, state a First Amendment claim.